In this video, I want to talk about the spinal cord located within the vertebral column as a whole, and I want to look at some of the different features that we can see, things like the cervical region, the thoracic region, the lumbar region, and the various plexuses that leave the cord. So there's a lot that can be found on this particular model. So the first thing I want to do is start with the spinal cord, and we're going to look at the cervical region of the spinal cord. The cervical region of the spinal cord has 8 spinal nerves that arise from the cervical region. See 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And we will see in the cervical cord both a cervical plexus and most of the nerves of the brachial plexus. Now in this model they do not do a very good job of depicting the cervical plexus, but here on the model we can see the ventral roots leaving the spinal cord, and on this side the ventral roots are still intact and they're forming spinal nerves, whereas on this side they have cut the ventral roots so you can look posterior to see the dorsal roots. We can also see the ventral median fissure of the spinal cord in this model. However, if we look carefully, we can see that they left some muscles in place on this model, and they did that on purpose. Although this is a nervous system model, we can see here 2 muscles of importance to us. This is the anterior scalene muscle. This is the middle scalene muscle. These are important anatomical landmarks. One of the major nerves of the cervical plexus comes from cervical regions 3, 4, and 5, and then that nerve passes over the anterior surface of the anterior scalene muscle. This is the phrenic nerve. The phrenic nerve is the nerve that innervates your diaphragm. Phrenic nerve innervates the diaphragm, comes from C3, 4, and 5, always over the anterior surface of the anterior scalene muscle. The other feature that we see here is there is a gap between the anterior scalene and the middle scalene muscle, and that gap is filled with the nerves that comprise our brachial plexus, the nerves to the upper extremity. So on this side of the model they have removed the anterior scalene muscle, and we can see these nerves of the brachial plexus passing over the anterior surface of the middle scalene muscle. If we look carefully, we can see that the nerves of the brachial plexus come from T1, C8, C7, C6, and C5. Or from the top down, C5 and 6, we'll see them unite here. C7 travels alone for a while. C8 and T1, which will unite here. These are the beginnings of the brachial plexus, from C5, C6, C7, C8, and T1 vertebral levels. Brachial plexus always found anterior to the middle scalene, yet posterior to the anterior scalene. So those are the features we can see the cervical cord on this model. Now if we focus in on the thoracic region of this spinal cord, we can see a lot of things again in this model. We see the ventral median fissure of the spinal cord. We see the ventral roots leaving the cord. Now in the thoracic region, those ventral roots and dorsal roots form spinal nerves, but those spinal nerves do not become involved in plexuses to the muscles. So they form what are called intercostal nerves. And here we can see the intercostal nerves on either side. But something else we can see on this model is these little pink dots along the side near the vertebral column. These are the paravertebral ganglia, or our sympathetic chain ganglia. And you can see how they are all linked together in one chain like beads on a string. And if you look carefully, you can also see the gray and white rami communicans coming from the spinal nerve, coming and going from spinal nerve and paravertebral ganglia. Also, if you look carefully on this cord, you can see these little gray spots. They look almost like saw teeth coming out from the cord. Those are made of pia mater. Those are denticulate ligaments, which we have seen in some of our other videos. The denticulate ligaments. So that's a good representation of what is going on this model in the thoracic region. Now I want to talk about what is going on in this model in the lumbar region The lumbar region, we have another plexus known as the lumbar plexus. Now the lumbar plexus is different than the cervical and the brachial plexus in that its nerve fibers do their intermingling to form a plexus within the psoas major muscle. So here we see the psoas major muscle, and they've cut portions of it open so that we can see the nerves within the psoas major muscle. The first nerve we see here is below the 12th rib. This is called the subcostal nerve. The subcostal nerve is not part of the lumbar plexus, but it's a good landmark for us. Under the 12th rib, the subcostal nerve. Then we have two more nerves involved beginning the lumbar plexus. They both come from the L1 vertebral level. That will be the iliohypogastric and the ilioinguinal nerve. Then if we pass down a little lower, we can see coming out from the side of the psoas major the lateral femoral cutaneous nerve. Here's our lateral femoral cutaneous nerve. Passing through the tissue of the psoas major, we can see a nerve called the genitofemoral nerve, and it will branch into a genital branch and a femoral branch. So here's our genitofemoral nerve. And then we also see from the lumbar plexus passing deep within psoas major, and then we see it in the trough between the psoas major and the iliacus muscle, the femoral nerve. So here we can see our femoral nerve. Now there is an obturator nerve also associated with the lumbar plexus. We cannot see it well on this side of the model. It is right down here in the pelvis, but it's colored such that it blends in with the bone. So here we can see our obturator nerve on this side. On this side, here's our obturator nerve coming down to pass through our obturator foramen. So that covers the lumbar plexus. If we focus in on the sacral region, we can see the nerves of the sacral plexus, but it gets a little crowded on this model, so I'm not going to worry much about the nerves of the sacral plexus on this model. I would like to go back, though, and focus on the lumbar region of the vertebral column and what's going on with the spinal cord in this region. In this region, we can see that the spinal cord tapers to a point. That point, that tapering region, is known as the conus medullaris. The conus medullaris. And coming straight down in the middle from the conus medullaris is actually a structure made of the pia mater that was covering the cord, and that structure right down the very middle is known as the filum terminale. The filum terminale. The rest of these structures here are actually dorsal and ventral roots that are hanging down from the lower regions of the cord, passing through an area known as the lumbar cistern to exit at their appropriate vertebral levels. And together we call this collection of these dorsal and ventral roots the Cauda Equina, which means the tail of the horse, or in English, the horse's tail. The Cauda Equina, because it looks somewhat like the tail of a horse.